Welcome to the Creative Crafters podcast. We have a return visitor, Andrea Haglund. I am so excited to have her back, and she to me is my sublimation queen. She does everything that sublimation and just explains it so well. So just a little bit about Andrea. She's a crafter, artist, maker, author, and teacher, and those are all part of her business, but also a part of who she is. She loves helping you to learn, explore, and succeed at the crafts and projects you want to conquer. And she specializes in teaching dye sublimation and even wrote the perfect book for crafters learning, A Crafty Guide to Sublimation. And it's something that you should all consider getting, and we'll give you more information about that in a little while. She's always hoped that that book would have been her resource when she started the path of adding dye sublimation to her craft room and business. So she is my technique expert and so much fun. So welcome back, Andrea. I am so excited to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here. It's always fun to be chatting with you and a part of all the many cool things that you do.
Well, thank you so much. And just to let you know, Andrea is going to be part of our summit on October 12th to 14th, and she has an amazing project that she is going to provide for you. And, it's just, you've got to be there to see what she's going to do. I'm not going to open up a can of worms here and surprise, just in case she changes her mind, which she won't. But Andrea,
I won't, because it's already recorded. So
great. So
yes, I'm so excited to be ahead of the game. It's not quite edited, but it is recorded. So I'm excited for this one because it's unique, but accessible to everybody. So I think that is such a huge part of what I'm trying to get out there to people right now, is that sublimation is accessible whether you have a printer or not, whether you're a painter or someone who can draw. There's lots of different options, and so we have an option that will go through a way to do this with all of those things. You don't have to have all of them. You can just have one. And so I think it's going to be unique and a different approach than a lot of people are taking right now.
Yeah. And speaking of sublimation, most people think that it's, you got to get that sublimation printer. You need to print out these amazing designs, then have the giant heat press to put it somewhere. So we know that that's not 100% true. So can you give us a few hints about where to start?
Yeah. So I actually really encourage people not to start there, because that is expensive and it takes up a lot of room. So if you already have a heat press, like you're in the vinyl, already making shirts world, I really encourage buying sublimation transfers from people online. There's lots of crafting companies that sell those. There's also the option, a company named Artistry that I absolutely adore and love. I love them as people, but as a company is making sublimation far more accessible, and they have created a lines of markers, and those are in Hobby Lobby, and then they make the Caesar brand that are in Michael's, but then they've come out with the coolest thing. They have come out with paints, and so you can paint. I am a terrible painter, and so I do give some options for those of us who can't paint, but want to use them, because you can get cool textures and things that you can't then do with a printer. So I always encourage sort of inching into something like this, because it is expensive. It takes up a lot of room, and it may not do what everybody thinks it does in the end. So I always recommend starting small with this, because it definitely can be something I've seen people regret when they just jump in full force from the beginning.
Yeah, and there's a number of printers out there, but they're all costly. And then you need, of course, that whole thing of the eco tanks full of special ink, and then you can't use it as a regular printer again. And
Yep.
I have not gone there yet, so I'm looking for your advice.
So if you want to jump into the printer world, like you want to give this a try, the biggest thing I tell people is start with an Epson um, workforce printer because the workforce printers still use cartridges, and you can buy cartridges that you then fill up with the ink. And so you can try different brands of ink until you find one you like. But the best thing is with like 4 head cleanings, you can turn it back into an inkjet printer. So you should not be regularly switching those back and forth. But say, for instance, you buy the sublimation printer, you get you try a couple different brands of ink, you really decide it's not for you, but you still could use a regular printer in your office. You just take those ink cartridges out, you do some head cleanings and like a deep cleaning of the printer, and now you have a regular printer back and you've not wasted all that money on the printer side of it. And so, and one of the best things about the workforce printers is you can often get the larger print sizes, the up to 13 inches wide that you can't get without a significant price difference in the eco tanks.
Yeah, I found I've got the 12-inch Epson that I just use for my stickers and everything else. I just absolutely love it. I'm thinking of stacking another one. It was only $99 for the printer.
Oh,
So
wow.
you
So
get them on sale on occasion.
yeah, and I would say not every Epson can be converted. So that's sort of a misnomer that everybody thinks if it's an Epson brand, it can be converted. There are some that cannot be converted, and so it is good to go and put in whatever Epson number it is, along with dye sublimation ink into whatever your favorite search engine is, and make sure you can get a couple different brands of ink. Because what happened to me is when I first converted an Epson printer, that's what I started with, and I loved it. And I loved the printer I got. The problem was the printer I got only, now this was at the beginning of everybody being able to convert Epson, but I didn't have any other choices for ink. So I only had one brand of ink and I was having problems with it. And I couldn't get other companies weren't making ink for that printer. So make sure there's at least 2 or 3 companies wanting you, like having ink options for you so that you're not stuck in that position. But also different companies of ink will turn out differently in your projects. So it's good to remember that you may not like the first company you choose. And if you go with an eco tank, just know that cleaning that and taking that ink out is a hassle. It's a really big deal. So that's why I really try and encourage people to start with the cartridges, even if that's not where you're going to end up long term. It's a great place to start. It's far less commitment long term.
Yeah, and then if you don't like the cartridge, you can recycle it in some way. And
well, then, I mean, at the very least, you can convert it right back to the inkjet and sell it as a regular printer. Where if you've put all of the dye sublimation ink in an eco tank, that can never then be a regular printer again. Mocha would like to join the interview.
I love your
My
dog.
puppy is like right in my face, and she's like, I want to be in the interview. Come on now.
Exactly. It's just like, and if you had a cat, it would be right in front of you as well.
Oh, yes, yes. Mocha loves to, it's funny because she doesn't like to be on videos, but when I'm on my phone or something, she loves to join the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. That's what pets are for.
Yes, yes. And she's such a fun, good girl.
Yeah, so one of the questions I'm always asked about sublimation, and I always refer them back to you because I don't do sublimation at this point, is how detailed can you get with it? Can you do photographs with sublimation?
You can, and that is actually why I started sublimation. Is I do nature photography and I love it, and I actually used to do high-end log home real estate photography, and I wanted to be able to offer that like as one of my things at craft fairs and stuff. Is I had all these beautiful photographs I had taken, And I was like, oh, this would be, something great to add for my corporate customers, but it's a way I could actually use my photography that's just sitting on my computer. And the printer you choose does matter in terms of photography. Just like if you were printing out a picture to put in a frame, it does matter what printer that you're choosing. So you want to choose one that does a decent job with photography. It doesn't have to be quite as detailed with that, but it will do as much detail as your printer will allow to print. So you can do photography, you can do detailed artistic drawings. The thing that you lose with it is with something like painting is the texture. You're not going to get any texture to any of it because obviously you're putting it onto a flat item. And so you don't have that, but you can get as much depth as you want. One cool thing that came up a couple of years ago is a lot of people were taking metal sheets and printing on them, dye sublimation metal sheets. And then they were printing like little parts of their photography on smaller ones and stacking them on top of them to like create a three-dimensional art piece. And it was just super, super cool. And actually, at the summit, I show a little bit of how you can do something like that in a much simpler way.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. I can hardly wait.
Yeah, so I wanted to create something that was a little bit different, but still accessible for people, but for the artists in there that want to be able to take that vision where they don't want it to look like a print. I wanted to give them that option too. So it's a pretty cool project, and I'm really, really excited because I haven't seen anybody quite mixing things in this way, and making it accessible for people to, like, the beginners starting out. Like, this is not a project. Like, I want to be clear. This is a project. If you've never done sublimation and you have a home iron, you can do it. You'll need to get the stuff from Artistry, so it's not like completely free, and you'll have to get the sublimation blank, but it's not a project you need to spend hundreds of getting a bunch of equipment on. And you can use it with kids. Now kids need to be supervised because Artistry paints are, I think they say for like the paints are 13 and up and the kids are 9 and up. That's what they've tested it for and all of that. But this is, however parents feel comfortable supervising, but this is not something that needs even tons of like artistic, I can't paint, I can't draw. You give me a mouse and I'm great, but you give me a pen and a paintbrush and I'm lost. And but I show how you can not have those skills and still create a really, really cool art piece.
That is absolutely fantastic. Now, you mentioned blanks, and one of the things people figure that you can just put sublimation on anything, but there's obviously more to it than just anything. There must be some rules and guidelines. Can you fill us in?
Correct. So sublimation only goes on polyester and polyacrylic coated items. It is an actual chemical reaction happening. So we talk about, quote unquote, putting inks into a printer. We're actually putting the dye sublimation chemical into the printer. And then that's what Artistry has done with the pens and with the paints, is they've put this chemical into a carrier. It's really not ink. Ink is just kind of the best way to describe it. But it does need to go on polyester or polyacrylic coated items. We typically call those substrates. So if you are looking for something online, substrate is usually the best way to call that. You can technically create your own substrates. I definitely don't recommend that as a beginner thing at all. That is definitely a more advanced situation. But for instance, if you wanted to do a t-shirt, any t-shirt that's 100% polyester down to 60% polyester blends work. And the lower the amount of polyester, the more like faded or vintage it will look.
Okay, so you can create an effect on purpose by pushing down the polyester count.
Yeah, and some people just there's some great polyester shirts now that you can get out there that feel like cotton t-shirts. But some people just can't get over that, or they want that like more vintage look. And if you bring it down, the closer you get to that 60% polyester, which I don't recommend doing less than that because just there's not enough of it to accept the chemical in the bonding to make it look nice. But the closer you get to the 60%, like if you've ever seen like the faded vintage t-shirts that companies sell and stuff like that, that's what you're going to get at the 60%, where at the 100%, you're going to get the vibrant ink. And the other thing that people really don't understand is sublimation doesn't have white in it at all. So anything white in the design will be whatever color the substrate is. So if you're putting something on heathered gray or pink or whatever white is in there is going to be that color that you're putting it on. And sublimation is a transparent process. So it's actually dyeing the fabric or the substrate as a permanent dyed process. So it's not going to fade, crack, peel, any of that. But it is transparent. So anything that is behind it is not going to be, you're going to see through it. I equate it to like a really thick watercolor or a thicker piece of stained glass where you can see through it, but you're not going to like see the back clearly. And so I think that's important for people to understand because you're not going to, and I tend to use the snowman as my example is if you draw a snowman and you just draw a white snowman and you try and sublimate it, nothing will print and nothing will press because there is no white ink. If you surround the snowman with, let's say, blue lines, and you put a snowman on a blue t-shirt, you're going to have a blue snowman because with blue lines because there is no white ink, but also it's transparent. You're going to see that blue through it. If you have heathering in your shirt, that's a lot of it. You're still going to see the heathering through the design.
Yeah, I can imagine, the white, if, if you decided a black shirt with a black design with white around it, it's not going to show whatsoever.
So you definitely need it to be on light colors because since it is transparent with no white ink, the darker the color, the less you're going to see, and putting it on black just isn't an option. Black, navy blues, dark reds, dark greens, none of that is going to show up enough to have made it worth your while to put anything on it because you're not getting that white and it's not dense, right? It's not something that sits on top of it to block it. There are things you can do that with, but then you're dyeing like you're doing the process of dye sublimation onto a carrier that will then sit on top of the shirt and not like dye the item. And the beauty of dye sublimation is that it is permanent. It can be a curse too when you mess up. There's no fixing it. There's no bleach. Bleach doesn't work on polyesters, and there's no fixing it. So when we mess up, it's an oops moment, and you just gotta laugh it off and keep going. I've been doing this for almost I can't even remember, at least 8 years now, and I still mess up. But you're gonna mess up. You need to just be willing to go with that. But it is permanent, which is fabulous because I have shirts that I made. Some of the first shirts I made, I still have them, and the fabric itself is doing worse than the print. So the print is still there and vibrant, but t-shirts, they pill and wear down with washing and use and all of that. And the shirt's going to die long before the print will. So that can be a really great thing that you don't get that fading, cracking, and peeling you do with pretty much every other process out there.
Yeah, because the other process, I'm thinking iron on and that type of stuff, yep, that it will peel and come off. I did some pillows one Christmas, and I think it was about 4 years ago. I noticed that it's all peeling off now, but
yeah,
it's not a permanent thing. So what about like ceramic coasters, mugs, that type of stuff?
Oh, There are thousands of options. The way I typically describe to someone if I don't have anything handy on me that is has sublimation on it is if you've ever seen the picture mugs where you see the picture like pressed onto the mug, I feel like every kid at some point has ordered these or gotten these for their for their loved one, like grandparents and stuff. Those are all done through the dye sublimation process. And so there are specially coated ceramics, woods, metals, glass, acrylic. One thing that I am working on, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because I'm in the middle of a move. By the new year, I'm hoping to release sort of a line of things that are cut on the laser where you can print and press your own designs onto them. So just some different things, not the things you can get every day, but some very specific like stackable designs like you're going to be seeing at the summit in October.
Oh, that sounds incredible. Now you're talking about the markers and pens where you can get some texture. Now, if you put those on a mug and put them in a mug press, is that going to create an issue?
So when I say texture, I more mean like the look of the paintbrush going through the paint that you really can't get in a digital format. When you're doing digital design, even when you choose a paintbrush in, whatever program you're designing in, it's never going to look like you stuck your paint in paintbrush and put it on a piece of paper. And when you're doing the paints, especially, you're actually sticking your paintbrush in the paint and putting it on there. You won't get a texture on the item in the end. You're going to get the print of the texture, but what you're going to get is that realistic look of it having been painted to begin with. And the downside of doing like the paints and the pens and stuff like that is that it's a one-shot deal. You do it, you press it, and it's done because you've activated the chemical and it's done the chemical process. But that can be really cool too because you're now having a one-off, really cool thing that you've created comparatively too. And for kids, that can of course be lots of fun, and they can make lots of fun interesting things there. And what I like especially with the markers, if you don't have a printer yet, you do have a cutting machine, you can put it in all the cutting machines just as you would any other marker and have the machine do the design for you. So you can get a little more complex there than you would just by being able to hand draw. One tip that I give to a lot of people getting the markers is you need to, most of the substrates and things you're putting on, you need to mirror your design or flip it over. And because we're going to press it down, face down, and you want to be able to have it read and look the right way. And so if you print in your printer a really dark black design, you can flip your page over and you can trace it with your markers, with your sublimation markers, and then you can do that. So there are lots and lots of options of ways. If you're like me and you can't actually paint or paint or draw for the life of me, there's lots of options to still end up with really cool designs that you couldn't do, and you'll get then the marks that make it look more hand done, which I think it can be really cool depending on the design.
That sounds absolutely fabulous. I'm not going to pump you for any more information today because I want everyone, all the listeners, to make sure they come to the summit and then, of course, connect with you on Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So tell us a little bit about how they can connect with you, and which is really important. One place they can go and get all the links.
Well, the beauty of one thing I've done right in my business is my handle on every single platform is My Very Crafty Life. So whether it is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, it is the same across the board. So you can find me on all of them. I'm going to be ramping up my TikTok here soon. So you're going to be seeing some interesting things pop up there. And you can always find me on Facebook and Instagram. Those are definitely the main platforms to find me on right now. But and Facebook has hundreds, if I don't know that I've reached the 1,000 mark, but hundreds of videos that I've done over the years on teaching and doing projects and helping people.
Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. So we've been talking to Andrea Haglund, and I just want to thank you ever so much for giving these nice detailed explanations, and I know everybody's going to be able to use it. So thank you once again, and this has been the Creative Crafters Podcast.